Hello. Guys, it's me. It's Owen. Let me show you something. Yeah, it's me. Here's my label. Hopefully it's not backwards. Well, I'll probably just upload this video because, yeah, just starting out. I don't know all the video stuff yet. I mean, I can put it in my editor, do it, but I just want to make a video. Just want to upload the video. You know, this is, so yeah, I'm a coffee roaster. This is my company, Cafe de Paraiso. This is just one of like many different coffees I sell. What am I doing? So I'm back. I'm here to talk about how to change the world. It's very important to me because the world could use a lot of changing. You know, there's a lot of things that are not right that I like to have be better. So when I started the coffee company back in 2013, I was like, okay, this is cool. I was an internet web guy. I'm like, all right, I'm going to make a coffee company because I want to sell a physical product. That's going to be cool. And I know exactly where it comes from. I know the farm because I met someone in Brazil whose family has a coffee farm. But long story short, it also struck me that like, well, the reason I quit my job before that was because the company didn't have some explicit goal to make the world a better place. Like the world could be going to hell in a handbasket and the company would still be doing just fine because their motto at the time was to be the best customer service company in the world. And it's like, okay, well, the world could be totally falling apart and, you know, wars everywhere, famines, everyone's sick. And as long as they're still meeting their customer service goal, hey, everything's groovy, right? So, so I was like, that I care too much about the world. I want the world to be a better place. I've seen too much. I know too much. So yeah. So I said to myself, you know, okay, how do I make myself passionate about this thing that I want to put a bunch of time and money into to try to do something? You know, besides just making money, the just making money part was not interesting to me because you could make money all sorts of ways. How do you feel when you go to sleep at night? And when you're on your very last day of your life and you're asking yourself, like, what did I do with my time? You're like, oh, I just made some money. You can't take that with you anyway. But the thing that you do take with you is the impact that you have on other people, is the meaning that you create in the lives of others, which is really the meaning of life. I mean, bomb right there. But yeah, the meaning of life is the meaning you create in the lives of other people. It's the meaning that your life helps create. So back to me doing the coffee company. So when I started the coffee company, I had this sort of epiphany that, you know what, because it was bothering me, like, it's not going to really, you know, satisfy me if I'm just doing a thing only for money. So I said, well, how do I make roasting coffee, making coffee, doing coffee business something that I can be really passionate about? And the thing that struck me, the epiphany that I had was, you know, I was looking at all these other coffee companies, like the big corporations, and seeing how much power, how much reach they have, how much, I guess, opportunity to interact with people through every interaction they have with their customers, and how little they're taking advantage of that opportunity to essentially try to educate people and also try to use their company as a means to make the world a better place. So I said to myself, you know what, I could do that. I could be the change I want to see in the world in the form of a coffee company. And I think anybody could do that in any business, no matter what you're doing. It just so happens to be coffee in my case. Coffee is interesting because it is an agricultural product. Agriculture is like probably the number one way we impact the planet in terms of like physically touching the earth. Resource usage, because we eat and we put things in our mouths every day, right? Coffee is very popular today. It's like growing in popularity, and so that's a big thing. Also, coffee touches sort of every place on the planet. People almost in every country drink coffee in some way, And so there's just a lot of opportunity to touch many people, and to, if you're doing something good, to have that good thing spread and touch many people from sourcing in different countries all over the world. It's an international thing. So anyhow, so drink coffee, change the world is the slogan that I put on my logo, because it's so important to me that my coffee company has this emphasis. So why am I making this video? It's because I want to make a lot of videos to help show people how they can change the world, how they could drink coffee, something so small and innocent, and then change the world. And there's actually lots of small, innocent things you can do in your daily life that can make a massive impact and actually change the world. You know, like, just analogy wise, like, first of all, you have to think on this sort of spectrum of like, nothing I do makes any difference, so it doesn't matter what I do because I'm never going to change anything. And I want to help get you to the other side, to where you're like, listen, every action I take matters. I have the ability to change the world. I can do it. I have the capability, and I know what to do, and I'm going to take that action. So I want to, if you're anywhere on that spectrum, I want to get you to the place where you're like, I know what to do, I'm empowered to do it, I'm capable, and I'm going to take action on the thing. So that's what this is all about. I just right now, today, I posted one of the videos I made like yesterday, the day before, which was about voting with your dollars. And that's this huge, massive thing that literally, if everyone did it, it would completely, utterly, totally change the face of our society. Because the difference between giving money to a corporation that's just going to give it to billionaires, that's just trying to make stockholders wealthy, and that only cares about their bottom line, is completely a different planet than if a majority of the population were shifting their dollars to small, locally owned businesses that are sourcing things locally and that care about people. That's a totally different planet. It's completely different. In fact, I mean, if you think about this, the way that our economy, from a Wall Street stock investor standpoint and GDP growth goes, every time someone is diagnosed with some terminal illness, the stock market's going up, because healthcare industry companies are going to be able to sell them lots of prescriptions, and they'll have to, charge through their insurance tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars for treatments, surgeries, whatever type of healthcare thing that's also super overpriced in the United States. But my point is simply this, is that if a city and a group of people are taking care of themselves, they're not dependent on some centralized, food system, electricity grid, water system, and in fact, they're actually themselves taking care of themselves, like growing their own food, processing their own water, collecting their own rainwater, they're learning how to educate themselves, they're able to produce their own electricity if they need it. If a group of people do that, then technically, based on our economic wizards in Washington, D.C. and in Wall Street, suddenly things are getting worse economically, even though it's totally in a positive interest for people to do that, to not be dependent on centralized systems of food and industrial energy production and healthcare systems that are deeply entrenched in like profit motives that don't actually do anything for proactively to prevent people from getting sick. You see how things are kind of backwards, and the difference is where you spend your money every day. Where do you vote with your dollars when you buy stuff? So, okay, anyway, that's a video that I did. It's super important. There's more stuff I want to say. I've got so many things I need to tell you guys. So there's another concept that is just blowing my mind right now, which is that we are on this precipice of a total transformation of society in the most positive way. And the reason for that, and the signs all over the place, but part of the reasons are when things seemingly get bad. Let me kind of rephrase that. It's that today with our information, things can seem more and more worse and worse. And I guess in some cases, in some ways, economically, the sort of fable of capitalism is progressing towards this sort of ultimate, which is that a very small group of people essentially win the monopoly game and also control the government and all the laws that are made that help them only and don't help anybody else. And then the large swath, overwhelming 95% of the population are essentially impoverished, not having the ability to easily access anything they want because their interests are not represented in their government, because their government is basically bought and paid for by the very wealthy at the top, who can use money to basically leverage them. And overwhelmingly, the people who are in the very poorest strata of society never actually have anyone representing their interests. So that's one side, is like when things start to get worse and worse, it's like the teeter-totter has more of an ability to shift. The other thing that's so amazing right now is that we are living in this complete generational shift, which is going to happen inevitably over time as people essentially born before the internet and a society that functioned before the internet. When I say the internet, I'm not saying like, oh, social media, all these great things. What I'm saying is access to information and the ability for every single person to have a one-to-many communication power. Meaning that in the past, we were essentially, our information diet about how the world worked was totally dependent on newspapers and mass media that was controlled essentially by the very few. You could argue local newspapers were independent at the time, but slowly all local newspapers and news outlets have been gobbled up by a very small number of major news corporations or mainstream media that basically own all information that's being disseminated through any mainstream channel. And so that is happening, yes, but the internet is completely shifting the information game in the sense that now, for the first time, the average person has the ability to say something and have millions of people see it. That's never been the case before, really ever, unless you were essentially like the king or the person who's super empowered, which then you're not the average person. So that's happening right now. And my parents, when they were born, that was not the case. So they lived in a world that was essentially being fueled by an information diet from the elites and those in power, who will never say anything that's going to disrupt the system that's helped them be in power. And then today, you have people being born and people who are now starting to get to the age of where they can start to own companies, build wealth, be more proactive in participating in the political sphere and also in the world, just having more influence, being able to amplify their voice, have power, and have the knowledge and wisdom about how the world works and the agency to then take action, make a difference, make videos, share information to the world about what's really going on and what's really important. So the shift that's taking place is the shift in the information diet of everyone, because now you have the choice. You can say, I want my information diet, my daily nutritional brain intake of news and info about what is this reality that I'm in. You can choose to get that from the people who are in power, who are running things, which is mostly these large corporations that only care about the dollar, or you can get it from regular people. That's a totally new paradigm. The reason why this is so critically important is what it means is that we have the ability to shift the power of the mental landscape of what people think. The information diet that people are receiving is now shifting demographically, generationally throughout the world. And like particularly what's happening is younger generations are using the internet. They're also using social media, and more they're using information from other people, like other average people who just started to essentially create their own independent news source, a news source that's not corrupted by large corporate advertising and money, or the government, which has a lot of leverage because of access to government press conferences and press releases and inside sources. So this new independent media is growing, and it's already the dominant media for people, my age, I'm 43, and younger. But for folks who are older, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, who are the presidents of nations, who are running the major corporations around the world, who are running the militaries, and all of our essentially civic and societal policies and international relations are mostly predominantly people who were born before that internet democratization of information shift. So what that means is that we are right now standing in the middle of this shift that will change humanity forever, which is that the voice and the concerns and the cares of the average human who has human interests is now going to become the dominant information and concern, and it will be replacing an old paradigm of the dominant information being sourced only from the elites who control our governments, the wealthiest people, essentially the folks that through whatever means are at the top and most likely are the ones who care the least about the average person. And that's just kind of how it goes. And it's a mix of many different factors, but the point is we're in this very exciting time right now. And what it means also is that if you have something to say that's important, if you have a message, if you have an idea that is very important, that is fundamental, and that relates to something that is actionable to the average person, that idea actually more than ever in human history has the ability to spread like wildfire. And we're right now living in the middle of this time where there's this tension between the young generation, which is the new paradigm, essentially you could argue suffering under the tyranny of the old generation that essentially grew up in a totally different paradigm, a paradigm and worldview where, let's take the last century, for example, where it was okay and celebrated to kill other people, where it was okay and celebrated to segregate one human from another based on how they look, their religious beliefs, their sexual preferences, really anything. It was totally fine to discriminate and to say one human is better than another and to go to war over it and to have that be like scientific philosophy. Like that was the law of the land in the last century. And people grew up on that. That was their information and cultural breakfast. And that paradigm is being shattered by a new generation of people who are growing up in an age where you are playing, your digital video games that you're playing, or social interactions, your content that you're consuming through social media is international. It crosses all barriers and boundaries, and it's being sourced from other people just like you around the world. So we have today, for the first time, as opposed to 100 years ago, you can be someone in Alabama who's growing up, but you're playing chess or your video game or doing your social media dance with people in Iraq and in Somalia and in Malaysia and in Russia and in China and in Brazil. And the conversation of what it means to be a human is shifting from I am this country, this flag, to I'm a human being and I deserve rights. I deserve to have clean environment to live in. I deserve to have access to education, to learn, to a health and safe environment, and to basically have the ability to thrive and to not be suppressed by famine, by political corruption, by wars, by environmental degradation or discrimination or cultural discrimination, or to be seen as a subclass of humans simply because I look different or act different or have different preferences. That is a completely new paradigm for reality, and it is taking over, and it is amazing, and it is a humanitarian shift because humans are realizing that essentially that their family is not just, oh, it's just my family, or it's just my city, or it's just my state, or it's just my country. People are realizing I am one. My tribe is now everyone on the planet. And it's this, if it doesn't make sense, it's illustrated by this point. Nevada, which is the state where I'm in the United States, would never think to resolve a conflict with California by dropping bombs on Los Angeles. And yet, we think that's okay today to do it in other countries, at least the folks who grew up 60, 70 years ago, because they were raised in a culture of people who would sometimes celebrate killing other humans en masse. Because they were in a different culture, it was always us and them. They were different people. They could be dehumanized. Today, you can't dehumanize people because for my generation and younger, everyone on the planet is part of our tribe. So I would never consent to dropping bombs in some other place because that's like dropping bombs on my neighborhood or my cousin's neighborhood or my friend's neighborhood because my friend lives there. The world is now getting smaller in a good way in the sense that it is now getting harder and harder for governments to get away with essentially mass murder for the sake of power and money for elites and billionaires, for military industrial complexes that profit off of building and selling weapons, politicians selling those weapons to large defense corporations that profit from it and then donate to that politician's campaign, and then they find places where they can go conduct a proxy war to be able to use those munitions somewhere, and then create the narrative of the world is a super dangerous place, we're full of all these evil humans, when really it's just all these megamaniacal political leaders around the world who are just sort of doing their old paradigm game of us versus them. But there is a new paradigm happening on planet Earth, and it is beautiful, and it's driven by love, and it's driven by connection, and it's driven by people's basic humanity. And that is this very exciting thing that we're in. And so the way that you can support that, the way that you can help humanity shift is by shifting your information diet and the information diet of everyone you know to independent media sources and away from large corporate-run for-profit engines that will never want to shift or change the big money paradigm of how our government is run by large corporate funding and does not represent the interests of people. You want to shift where you get your information to independent news sources instead, shift your eyeballs. It's going to shift advertising dollars away from those large corporations. It's going to take power away from them and take power away from the old narratives that essentially helped fuel all the disasters that we have currently going on in the world. I believe the world is becoming a safer and safer place, and another aspect of that is that the transparency of the internet allows it so that if something horrible happens somewhere, now everyone has a cell phone, they can record it, so it seems like we're getting all this negative information, but actually it's because all the negative things that are happening in the world are actually able to have the light of day shined on them, and we can actually see them for what they are, and we can start to fix and address those things instead of not even knowing that they're there because of distance or because of lack of access to information. So I just want to celebrate that we're in this amazing time, and I want to encourage you to seek out independent news and information sources and seek to unsubscribe from mainstream media to the extent that makes sense to you, and to encourage your friends to do the same. And if you use any major media sources, to know that what they're saying is not the full story, and that if you want the actual human story of what's going on, you need to look to independent voices. And as you do that, we all start to shift the information mental landscape of our planet and our society to the new human-driven society, culture, value system that we're inevitably moving towards. And we can help do it in a more peaceful, in a more loving, in a more compassionate, in a more human way, faster when we do that. So that is my How to Change the World message. Look for independent media news sources. Think about your information diet, where you're getting information, and try to maybe have a new diet and see how that goes. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you. Much love.